So welcome to this evening's session. I'm Catherine Taylor, one of the directors of Wellbeing Australia, and I really warmly welcome you all to our session. Before going on with anything, I'd just like to acknowledge the Gadigal and Bidjigal people from the land that I am speaking today. And on behalf of Wellbeing Australia and our community, I would like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Island people joining us tonight, but also joining us online later. So thank you for joining us. For those of you who know only a little bit about Wellbeing Australia, we are a national charity organisation, so we're a not-for-profit that is funded by memberships and funded by basically community grants and sponsorship. So we are very much dedicated to supporting positive, proactive wellbeing for the broad and diverse Australian community. Everything we do is positive and proactive, so we are all about solutions. We know there are fantastic providers helping and supporting those with depression and anxiety and other things impacting our wellbeing. We are looking holistically at a number of elements of wellbeing that we know are impacting people at different points and times. Tonight's very much about our social and emotional wellbeing that we'd like to speak, and in the future we'll be discussing some of those other elements. So just to explain a little bit more about our community, this wellbeing series has been developed based on our community feedback and the breadth and diversity of the Australian community that is seeking to improve their wellbeing. So those that are dialing in tonight or listening to us later, everything from the education sector to first responders, veterans, families, workplaces. We really respect that everybody has so many different hats that they're wearing on a daily basis. We're trying to provide through our series throughout the year an opportunity to just be mindful about one of those elements or one of those hats to try and improve your world. So in terms of what we're going to be talking about tonight, it's very much solution-based strategies for you in your family space. And that family space can be any number of different things. We recognise and respect that families are those that you choose to surround yourself with and those that you choose to care and give back to. So we're certainly not respecting parenting in a classic traditional form. We're talking about those who are caring for others, and that may be at a number of different stages and phases of life. So just before I hand over to Rachel, our fabulous speaker, I just wanted to mention that our series from this year, 2023 on, is a monthly series, which is what we were asked to provide so that you guys had more regular and targeted areas to sort of focus on. And we're providing a range of different think tanks and member sessions on a quarterly basis as well. This event is being recorded, and that recording will be accessible to everyone straight after the event as well. If you require a certificate of attendance for work purposes, that will be sent through to you again after we've completed. And if you have any questions, comments, insights, if you want to share where you're coming from or why you've dialed in today, please use the Q&A function on the bottom of the screen, and we will do our best to make sure we get through as many of those questions as possible. Before I move on with anything else, I would like to welcome our speaker today and add her to join us. Rachel, welcome. You're on silent. You've muted yourself, my dear. So, we love technology.
Yes, so we do.
Rachel Stewart has an absolute wealth of experience working in the family area, supporting those who are parenting, guiding, caring for young people at various stages in their life. And Rachel, something I really value about you is the fact that you're working in collaboration with so many parts of the community. I think it's really important for us, and that is something we tend to focus on, is who are we working and who is that village that's raising our young people today. So your discussion today is going to be fantastic, kicking off the new school year, helping us get some ideas about how we can better collaborate and work together to get some positive learning frameworks. So I'll hand to you to introduce yourself a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and thank you everyone for joining us here this evening. I'm sure it's been a busy week for you so far, especially if you have got children starting school this week. I hope everyone is as calm as possible, and I'm sure you're actually quite pleased that the school holidays are done and that we can get back to some sort of routine. For those of you who don't know me, I am a a coach and consultant. I run my own business, Practically Learning, and I specialise in developing the capacity of teachers and parents to support children's learning and wellbeing. And I've been doing that for the last 12 years, but prior to that, I guess my journey into parent engagement in learning began when my children were babies. I saw it as my unique role as a parent to be able to support their learning and development, and I didn't feel that should stop when they started school. So it was a little different when that journey began. So I started to look at ways to improve or to stay connected with my children as they journeyed through the school, their schooling. So that's how I landed into this space of parent engagement in learning, and I'm really excited to be here tonight, and I thank Wellbeing Australia for the opportunity to share my knowledge with you and some strategies to help you to manage, I guess, the challenges of your everyday lives in connecting with your children and to build those positive learning opportunities at home. So just to ensure that you get the most out of this evening's webinar, I'd like to keep it a little bit interactive. So I'm going to ask you to perhaps put some short answers in the chat box, and we might even have time for a very quick activity during the webinar. So I think there's opportunity to ask questions during the webinar too in the chat box just to the right of the screen. But I just want to ask you, is it okay for you to just invest the next 45 minutes and really take home some learning today that you can apply pretty much straight away? And if that's a yes, can you pop a Y in the chat box right now just to test that out, to test out the theory and to see if you're actually there? So just pop a Y in the chat box.
It's that being present, isn't it, Rachel?
It is about being present and really actively listening and participating in the webinar. I believe there's probably a lot of you from different parts of Australia on the line tonight, so it would be great also to hear where you're from. So just pop in the chat box if you're from which state you're from. Can't see any chats in there, any answers in there yet. Catherine, can you see any?
Yes, we've got a few yeses. And then, so with the chat, you can use that Q&A function. The chat it basically directs you back to Q&A so that you get some privacy, so that everybody's coming through saying yes. Here from Melbourne, New South Wales, a range of different areas actually. So thank you, guys.
That's excellent. Okay, I'll just share my screen so we can get started. Okay, so no doubt everyone on the line tonight has various reasons for being here tonight to learn different ways that you can build a positive learning environment in your home. And I've just put this image up on the screen because it really it reminded me of a kaleidoscope, and it really represents the different facets of each of you. Everybody is different, and everyone comes from a different background. Everyone has different family experiences, different life experiences, and you're dealing with different things every day, such as your professional life, your family life, your spiritual and internal self as well. Everything that's happening to you each day impacts your well-being and has a flow-on impact on your family and your family life. Much of what we know about well-being stems from how a person thinks and feels, and the different bodily responses that we have whenever the brain is active and perceiving. The brain functions is something that we're going to be exploring this evening, and how emotions are connected to our well-being and what's happening around us in our daily lives, in our external environment and in our internal environment. In our very fast-paced world that we live in now, there's so many things happening all the time that we're dealing with. And a lot of the external factors and internal factors are really something that we need to be aware of, and how that actually impacts our well-being and those people that are surrounding us, including our children. So this slide here that I've put up on the screen really explores, because we're looking at how we're developing a supportive learning and positive learning environment at home this evening. I'm actually going to be focusing more on people who have children. So if you don't have children this evening, you will still get something out of this webinar, because I'm going to explore some personal development strategies as well. But in terms of families who are sending their children to school, whether they're primary aged or secondary aged students, statistics are showing that most of the influences on learning happen outside of school, outside of the classroom. And sometimes when I show this statistic, it's quite alarming to people to see that much of what children are influenced by is happening outside of school. And you can see on the left, the factors that influence children at school are teachers and that very important teacher-child relationship, school community and the culture of a school community and how that helps children feel welcome. We know that peers are a huge factor in influencing children and their well-being, and particularly now with a lot of external factors such as social media that we're all dealing with as parents. And also curriculum, of course, which is what the children are exposed to every day. And the outside factors outside of school, mostly family, my apologies, and social context. And depending on your family structure, children are influenced by the environment that you provide at home, and also the community that you expose them to and the people that surround them that are influences on them and their learning and their well-being. Also socioeconomic status as well. And we also know that gender, diversity, culture and religion have huge influences on children and their well-being and how they manage every day. So this slide here really explores, this was a brainstorming session that I ran for a workshop a few years ago with parents, just to gauge what they believe influences a child and what makes a difference in a child's life. And as you can see, there are a lot of similarities in their responses, but mostly they're around, love, good role models, as I've mentioned, good influences, quality time with your children, including play and having time with family, friends, social gatherings, and the people that you expose them to in the community, such as sporting groups and other types of hobbies that they might be interested in. So all of these factors really influence a child's life, and as parents, as leaders, you have a lot of responsibility in how you guide and support those positive experiences in the home and in the community. So I just want to ask you for whether it's okay with you if I just share a little bit about my own experiences as a parent. If you can pop in the chat box if you're happy for me to share a little bit of my story in how I came to, I suppose, do the work that I'm doing now with parents and really sharing my knowledge and understanding of how to manage the challenges of daily life. So just pop in the chat box.
Again, just pop it in the Q&A because the chat will be blocked otherwise. It's just for privacy of those that are dialing in.
Just a Y in the chat box. Okay. Well, something that you may not have known about me about 15 years ago, I was pretty much like many of you, raising 3 children. And I had 3 children under 5. I was just starting the school journey with my eldest daughter. And I was juggling a 4-year-old and a toddler at the time, trying to juggle my career and really just struggling with the daily grind, I suppose, of running a family and really just trying to keep my head above water. And most of my friends would have told you at the time that I looked like I had it all going on, like I was not struggling at all, that I was able to manage it and make it look really easy. But underneath, I really was like I was really struggling and trying to actually balance myself and have an understanding of who I was, because I dedicated most of my the past 5 years to raising or having 3 children and raising them. And the whole school journey, going into the school journey, was a huge daunting experience for me because I didn't really have a great experience at school myself. So I was at a point where I was feeling I was neglecting myself, neglecting my health. And it wasn't a very pleasant time for my children either because I wasn't happy. That meant they weren't very happy either. And the environment at home, as much as I tried to keep it calm and pleasant, it was challenging. It was really challenging. And I had a very challenging oldest child who some of you might relate to, pushing the boundaries and continuously trying to test me. So I decided to do something about it, and I took some action and got a coach, a life coach, and it's the best thing I ever did. And I'm going to share with you some strategies that he taught me tonight, so that you too can take these home with you, and really apply them in your home environment. What I did was really apply what he taught me. I learned about myself. I spent a lot of time doing personal development work on myself so that I could actually give the love that I wanted to give to my children and create those environments in the home that were able to foster a love for learning for my children and really create the environment that I wanted to have for them growing up as young children. So what we're going to explore today is the first half of the session will be about your self-awareness and self-care and how you respond to children in different life situations. And these are really focused on your own personal development, which, as I mentioned, is really important to be able to actually have the groundwork to create those positive learning environments or experiences for your children. And then we'll have a look at some of those strategies as well, routines and family rituals, and creating rich learning opportunities for children so that you can actually enjoy learning alongside them and seize those teachable moments. So during the pandemic, I was lucky enough to provide some webinars for parents who were really struggling with, as you can see, the bolded words in this list, really struggling with quite a few challenges, including anxiety, fatigue, worrying about their kids, how they were going to cope during lockdowns and whether they were missing out at school, how to remain calm during that time. And one important point that was raised by parents who actually completed this survey to give me these responses was filling your own cup to pour into others, which, as we know, is what we're doing every day. And really, a lot of us don't really take a lot of time to do that, to fill our own cup. And it's really important that we make a start. If you're not already doing something like this, like what I'm going to share with you tonight, it's time to make that leap to actually focus on yourself and find time for yourself. Other areas that they were struggling in, and no doubt some of you may even be struggling with this now, avoiding exhaustion or feeling exhaustion, getting short-tempered with kids or with your partner, a feeling of being out of balance, and basically finding ways to let go of control and find some sense of being a bit more centered. So how do we actually achieve this? Positive learning requires a positive environment in the home. So creating a positive environment, we can actually look at social and emotional learning skills that many children are actually learning these at school, and these can be applied to us as adults as well. And I'm not sure about you, but I don't recall learning any of this when I was in primary school or secondary school. And it's just fantastic that children are able to learn these skills now, but they can't just learn them at school because, as we saw before, 80% of what they're learning comes from the home. So really looking at how you can actually support these social emotional learning skills at home. And that really begins with you and how you actually present these to your children, because they're always watching us and learning from us. So leading by example is so critical with each of these. So we'll start with self-awareness, looking at recognizing our emotions and how we actually manage those, and looking at self-management in our own behaviours and why we behave a certain way. Also, social awareness, showing understanding and empathy for others and how we're actually demonstrating that to our children so that they actually pick up on those skills as well, and having conversations with them about empathy as well. And one thing I think that everybody needs to be learning, which I don't feel there's enough of, is relationship skills. How do we build relationships? And really focusing on that as part of creating those positive learning environments at home. What do relationships look like in the home? And how that translates to children's learning at school and how they develop positive relationships. And then responsible decision-making is making ethical choices and helping children to learn how to make good choices and decisions. So the first strategy that I'm going to share with you is one that I did learn through my coaching, and that is being more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. And I must admit, when I first learned this, it seemed so simple, and I was wondering why I never really had learned this skill before. Perhaps some of you are already aware of it. Maybe you do have really good self-awareness, but I'm going to just show you a way to actually explore this further. So basically, if you think of a train coming into the station, a big station such as Flinders Street Station, there's multiple trains coming in and out of the station every day and every few minutes. And our brains are the same. We have so many different thoughts coming into our brains, and then we can either choose to catch the train and go with that thought, or we can actually let the train go on by. So it really is a choice. We have a choice in how we actually go with a thought. Sometimes it happens so quickly. Most of the time it happens so quickly you don't really have a chance to catch that thought or to stop yourself from having an action or a response. So, but if you observe your thoughts and watch them to see them coming into your mind, and then observe the feeling that you get when you have a thought, and then what your body is doing as a reaction, or how you feel you should react or respond or take an action. So, for example, if one of your children comes home from school and says to you, I got pushed over in the playground this morning, what is your first thought? Your first thought might be, that's not very nice. Who is that child? It could be a very quick thought that you have. And your feeling might be a feeling of anger. And then your action could be a very impulsive response of blaming the other child without knowing the full story. So it's really about observing the thought, recognizing the feeling, and then pausing for a minute or for a second to work out how you're going to respond to that. And the reason this is really important is because when children do come home and tell you things, or you are observing something, sometimes you can be quick to catch that train. But children really need to be able to feel safe to be able to share things with you without fear of a reaction that is going to be angry or an overreaction or an irrational response. So it's really critical to start practicing this type of strategy. And it does take practice every day. I still have to practice it every day, and I've been doing it for the last 10, 12 years. But I still find myself observing thoughts that I shouldn't have, and whether I should go with that thought and how to actually manage that. So I'm actually going to get you to do a quick activity. I think we've got time to do this. I'm going to ask you just to take a pause for 30 seconds. And I'll just pop my timer on so I can make sure we don't go over time. And what I'm going to do is ask you to close your eyes and just allow the thoughts to come to you. Just observe any thoughts that come to mind. And now I'd like you to observe the feeling that you're having from that thought. What feeling has it triggered? And is the body reacting or taking an action? Are you feeling nervous? Are you feeling strange? Or is your body sweating? Okay, 30 seconds is up. So now you can open your eyes, and I'd love to see your responses in the chat. What was the first thought that came into your mind? If you'd like to share your thoughts, then your feelings, and then any actions. Tired. So that's a bodily action. So what was the first thought you had? You feel that you felt tired? Tired? That's interesting.
I think we have a theme there.
Yes, very much a theme. Perhaps lack of sleep or waking in the night, very common. Okay. So hopefully you were able to recognize that some thoughts come to us from the past. Some thoughts just happen instantly without even thinking. And some thoughts that we have are in the future. And really observing those thoughts is a really good skill to practice beginning today, and looking at how you can record those thoughts. So perhaps you could keep a journal of the different thoughts and feelings and actions that come up for you during the day, because often they are signs or messages that are coming to you to tell you something. And clearly, if you're feeling tired, perhaps there is a reason or there is a solution to try and get more rest when you can, and to start listening to your body when you are receiving those messages. So thank you very much for participating in that short activity. I'm just going to take you through the next strategy, which is really exploring what happens when we do have a response. And it really is looking at what actually causes us to have those thoughts, feelings, and actions. And a lot of the time it's external factors, things that are happening outside of your control, that you're actually responding to. And then there are internal factors, and that's what we just explored then. What's actually happening internally in your thought processes, how you are thinking, how you're feeling, and how you're responding. So let's have a look at the brain and the 3 ways that we actually respond. Through my work as a coach and learning from several coaching mentors, I've been exploring the brain and how the brain functions, and I'm totally fascinated with how human behavior and how it's related to the brain. And I think having an insight into how your brain works really helps you to understand yourself better, helps you to understand your children as well and why they're responding a certain way. And there's 3 general responses that we have from different parts of our brain to a thought or a feeling. And the first one is an impulsive response. And I think the statistic is around 80% of our actions each day are impulsive. We don't need to think about it. We do things automatically. Our brain actually functions quite well in telling us what to do. However, when we're actually responding to another person or a situation, impulsive responses can sometimes have not great consequences, or they usually have a consequence. And that, an example I can give is when children are young, a lot of the time their actions are very impulsive because they haven't quite learned how to manage their emotions, and they haven't really learned how to actually think things through rationally. And when you have toddlers, you can't rationalize with them because they don't really think that way yet. Their brains are still developing. So an impulsive action is an unconscious response, and it's a reflex from the limbic or emotional part of the brain. And if you think about children, they might be playing on the floor with other kids. And if I take you back to that example I gave before, where a child comes home and tells you they got pushed over, sometimes children rush through things, or they might lean across other kids and accidentally knock into them, or knock something over like a cup of water. And it's not because they mean to do that. It's very much an impulsive action from the brain. And then there's instinctive responses, which are generally referred to as subconscious responses. And it is a very protective factor embedded into our brains that help protect us from any danger or any fears. And a lot of our memories and experiences sit within the subconscious brain. And our brain has made connections through those past experiences that we can actually then access when something's happening to us. So, for example, we're walking up the street and we're walking past another person. Our instinctive brain instantly scans that person to see if they're safe. And depending on our past experiences or something we've heard, a connection we've made in our brain when we're younger, it actually draws on that memory to tell us whether that person is safe or not. The positive side of an instinctive brain, and one that's really important to nurture in children, is that because we're making those connections and because the instinctive brain actually protects us, it's good for children to be able to be enabled to take risks within reason, because the instinctive brain makes the connection. For example, if a child is climbing on the fence and accidentally slips, or they're riding their bike and they fall off the bike, the subconscious stores that memory in the brain. And then when they're riding the bike again next, or if they're climbing the fence again next, they know, their brain makes that connection. They know they have to be a bit more careful next time. So it actually protects you from making the same mistakes again. And then there's the intuitive brain part of the brain, and that's your intuition, and that's the conscious part. And that's where that activity, thoughts, feelings, and actions comes in, because when you're observing your thoughts, feelings, and actions, you're able to observe the messages that are coming through to you, and you're able to respond in a rational way. And sometimes the answers come to you when you actually tap into your intuition. So they are the three main areas of the brain that help you to decide what your response is going to be. And so I'd like you to keep that in mind as well and take that away with you today. And really, when you're observing your thoughts, feelings, and actions, think about what type of response you're having as well. So the next interaction you have with someone, see if you can work out whether it's an impulsive response, an instinctive response from your subconscious, or if it's coming from your intuition, and whether your response is a rational one from the rational brain. So how are we going for time? Okay, I think we've got time for this. So the next strategy I want to share with you is all about your own self-care and filling up your own cup to pour into others. Because as we know, parenting, our jobs, our daily lives are extremely busy and tiring, and just there's always challenges that come up for you. And the most important person in your life is you, and often no one else is going to take care of you. It's up to you to take care of you. And quite often we put ourselves last. So what I'm going to share with you is some strategies that have helped me over the past, I guess, most of my life, but really I only started exploring these around 15 years ago when I decided it was time to make some changes in my life and really take care of myself so that I could actually pour into my family. So it starts with routines, and really setting yourself some routines gives you the opportunity to feel more grounded, because if you're doing similar things every day, even if it's a routine to make your bed every morning, or something simple as having a tidy kitchen, or something that suits you in your own family context to give you a sense of stability. And it makes you feel a little bit more centered and grounded. Exercise, obviously, is important because it releases chemicals from the brain, and it gives you a sense of feeling strong and healthy. Even if it's only 10-minute walk a day, and it's part of your routine, it really does give you a chance to have some time to yourself, and really explore that part of you. Doesn't matter what sort of exercise it is, it's whatever suits you. Journaling is extremely important too, because often we have so many those thoughts going through our minds, and it's really important to get them out of our heads and onto paper. Doesn't matter what it sounds like when it's written down, but really reflecting on yourself and your day, reflecting on those thoughts, feelings, and actions. And at the start of the day and the end of the day, it's really good to set an intention. And it could be just a one-word intention. So, for example, my day today was focus. Okay, I need to be focused today. And that's what I'm going to be really concentrating on throughout my day. And then reflecting on it at the end of the day as well. And just being kind to yourself, and not really, not beating yourself up if you do lack focus that day, but really looking at yourself internally and what's actually going on with your thought processes. You may be involved in some sort of spiritual practice or religion, and it really is up to you what suits you to find some sense of peace and feel centered and calm. So really exploring what actually benefits you in that space to be able to give you those feelings of feeling centered. And the last one is downtime and play. And don't forget to play, because we quite often, as adults, everything's so serious. We've got so many responsibilities and we forget to play. And it's really important to play with our kids, especially. And I know my kids always used to love it when I played with them. And even though I was pushed for time, I always tried to make some time just to have some fun with them, because life's very short when your children are only with you for a short time. And it's very, very important to try and seize those opportunities to have some playtime with them. Okay. So now I'm moving into what ways you can actually support positive learning in the home for your children. And this is the Australian Wellbeing Framework, which many of you are probably familiar with. And this has been designed for use in schools, but I think that with any framework, you can really adapt it to any environment. And I think the elements of this framework really lend themselves to how you can be leaders in your home and show your visible leadership, show your family that sense of leadership and how they can be leaders as well as part of the family. Being inclusive of everyone in the family and making sure everyone has a say and is heard and is listened to. And that goes then into student voice or children's voice, and really enabling your children to participate in conversations and discussions about different things to do with the family within reason and whatever your family context is. Partnerships as well. So working in partnership within the family. So how can you actually work out ways that you can explore those partnerships with each other and support each other in your wellbeing and positive behaviours? So that just gives you a bit of a structure based on the Australian Wellbeing Framework that you can actually draw on to create that positive learning environment at home. Other ways to do this are to create rituals and traditions. And I'd like you to pop in your chat box again what sort of rituals and traditions you have created in your families, so that we can share some ideas with other people on the webinar today. I know in my family, we always shared meals together, not always, or as much as we could. And we had a games night on a Friday night. We would go camping together. The traditional rituals such as family gatherings and Christmas and all of those normal traditions that everyone has. It's really a way to explore what really suits your family, what suits your family context as a tradition or a ritual. So pop in the chat box, what sort of traditions and rituals do you have in your family?
And I might just share, Rachel, one from mine that I actually got off a good friend of mine, and it was genius. My children are now older, so ages 16 up to sort of 23. And we have a ritual Saturday night, which is movie night, but we rotate through whose movie it is. So it's that inclusion piece, because we were fighting about the movie every night, as everybody does. Yep. And it just became that pattern. And then places, I find the other thing is what we do on our holidays. I find it fascinating as my children have grown, things that have become, but that's what we do on holidays, which gives that comfort.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there's others coming through about walks on the beach and that sort of active involvement.
Beautiful. Yes. I know when we used to go on trips on holidays, we would have games that we'd play in the car too. And the kids couldn't wait to actually get in the car to play the games. And they were mostly word games and those sorts of things that help kids to think as well, and to be creative and have a laugh while you're driving on long trips. So thanks for sharing. The value of creating these rituals and traditions is really important for children's development, because what it does is it actually helps them to transition into different environments and provides a sense of stability and social awareness. I noticed there's a couple of other questions in there that we might answer towards the end. It's also really important for emotional regulation, because when you're creating those rituals and traditions, sometimes emotions do come up. But if you've created a safe space for your children to express themselves emotionally, you can help them to regulate those emotions in a safe space within your family. It also gives you an opportunity to teach you family values. And when you're going for walks on the beach and really sharing those traditions together, it becomes part of who your family is. And it's just the thing you do, as you mentioned, Catherine. So it really gives children a sense of belonging within the family and a sense of safety and stability. And also, when you're exposing them to different environments and different traditions and families and friends, it's important to observe how they do feel safe and how they feel significant in those environments, because I know sometimes within families, some children do feel a bit left out, and really just exploring and observing what environments you are actually exposing them to and how they're managing in those environments as well. Other ways that you can provide positive learning experiences at home are to enable rich learning experiences. And this is really exploring cognitive and non-cognitive development at home. And this is a really important piece of parent engagement in learning at home. Often we think that parent engagement is being on the school grounds, but it's actually critical to be developing these types of skills at home, because they impact how children learn at school. So by cognitive development, I mean they are really the thinking skills that children need to learn so that they can apply those in their daily lives and at school. So it's about processing information that's given to them, thinking about that information, understanding that information, observing it, creating and having critical thinking skills to then put that information in some sort of format or to actually apply it to developing a solution. And non-cognitive development is really more the relational skills and the social and emotional learning skills that we touched on earlier. So those two types of skills are absolutely critical for parents to be supporting at home, so that then they can actually cope with different types of learning and environments at school and out in the community. So some of the ways that you can do this is to set the scene for learning at home and really foster an environment where children actually love to learn. And I'll touch on that in just a moment, some strategies around that. Observing the learning and seizing teachable moments. So your opportunities to seize teachable moments are really, sometimes they are fleeting and they happen very quickly. And so your observation of your children and what they're doing is a good start to see how you can actually seize those teachable moments. Engaging in simple conversations around their learning and to encourage their learning is a really important part of your role as well. And even if you don't know what they're learning at school, you can still bring different learning opportunities into those conversations. And you might draw on some of your own experiences and just really teaching your children different ways to think differently and to observe what they're doing through those conversations as well. Asking questions is also a really important way, especially with teenagers. Instead of telling them what to do, it's really becomes a coaching role where you can ask lots of questions to help them find the answers. Providing different environments for play and learning. And by play, I don't just mean young children's play. Older children also enjoy playing in different ways, whether it is their games or whether it's sport or just having some fun with friends. And really having a look at play as a way to foster those cognitive and non-cognitive learning skills and seeing the value and the benefits for children's learning and wellbeing. So one of the ways to set scene for learning at home is really, as I mentioned, through play and your observations, and providing opportunities for exploration to understand different learning environments and giving children the opportunity to explore their senses and use those and really develop those impulsive, instinctive and intuitive brain functions. And seizing those teachable moments to teach awareness of how they are actually responding or reacting to things in their environment and building their self-awareness and their self-management skills. The image on the left that you can see is one of my son who had found a nest on the ground. We were walking back from taking his sisters to school one day. And so I saw that as an opportunity to have a learning discussion with him. Hence why I took the photo, because I thought this will be a great story to tell, and I tell it all the time. And we had a conversation for, I reckon, nearly 45 minutes about this nest and what the materials were that the bird had made the nest out of, where they came from, how the nest felt in his hands. He started asking me questions about the bird, where was the bird, why was the nest on the ground, and really exploring his curiosity in that moment. And really seizing that opportunity was important for his learning. And he's still a very curious being now as a 15-year-old. He's always looking up, researching things and asking questions. So there's lots of different ways that you can set the scene for learning. And another way is to allow your children to take certain risks, to build their grit and their resilience, and to put them into sporting activities and help them have those opportunities to be physical, because it's a natural part of our bodily functions is to do some sort of exercise or to be physical in some way. And also connection through conversation, as I touched on before. Creative and sensory play, and allowing those conversations to be around the different aspects of learning at school as well. So helping children understanding patterns, positioning and construction, and opposites, and having chats about big things, small things, stacking, sorting, measuring, combining a sense of touch with senses, visual play, listening, all of those different cognitive learning skills that really help their learning at school. Also let them experiment and explore and also fail. We know that in our daily lives, there's always ups and downs, and sometimes we succeed and sometimes we fail in different things. So giving children the opportunity to learn how to lose at sport, for example, or a game, and really helping them to manage their emotions around that, and seeing that as a learning opportunity rather than a failure. And ways to nurture children's experimental play are really, exposing them to different ways to build things, to follow instructions, get them in the kitchen, cooking and doing those sorts of things that really foster that type of learning as well, and their curiosity in how things work, with mechanics and different things that they're seeing and asking questions about, and really engaging in that learning. Getting back to basics and really looking at playing games, having games nights, and all of these games really are essential for building those cognitive and non-cognitive skills, because children learn how to cooperate, how to play together, how to be working in teams, and really having a bit of fun together as well. And it's probably one of your traditions as well, or rituals that you can create to choose a game and to run the game. And so fostering leadership in the home and those sorts of things that these types of games actually allow you to do. And of course, teenagers, they still like to play and do things with you occasionally. This father and daughter are building a robot, some sort of robot. My children were very much into passion projects, and when we were renovating our house, we got them involved in some projects around the house, and really just getting them involved in ways to explore their brain functionality as teenagers as well, and getting them into different things like drama, taking them to music shows, and really exploring their social and emotional development and what their passions and interests are as they're getting older. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my presentation, but I just wanted to finish up by thanking you for taking the time to be here tonight to learn a little bit more about your own personal development, and to know that you're actually not alone. Everyone is going through something, and really our wellbeing needs to be a focus. Personal development and self-reflection, and looking at ways that you're thinking, you're feeling, and you're responding, and ways that you can improve, so that you're able to actually create those positive learning environments at home for your children, and really foster a love for learning within your family. So I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I actually have a book coming out soon for parents that explores some of these concepts a little bit further. So I'll just hand it back to Catherine now to finish up the session this evening.
Thank you, Rachel. And I will send the link for the new book out to everyone who's joined us and who's dialing in later, so that they can register their interest and you can keep communicating with them as well. That was so helpful. And a couple of key things I found really fascinating in what you said, particularly your example around instinct. And you gave the example of, falling off a bike or a fence or something. But I thought so many of us as parents are focusing on our children's social development. And I imagine that need to experience to grow our knowledge base in our brain, and that learning center is equally important around relationships, for example, sort of trying to form a friendship, but also as they come through to being older and teenagers, and the bumbling through some of those challenges and dealing with the opposite sex or different situations that are there, the experiences that I think possibly we haven't had in the last few years to the same degree, going back to the rituals, that's equally as important, which I thought was a really interesting one. The other one you mentioned with the thoughts, feelings, and actions. I work with a lot of teenagers who are having challenges, and so families where we're talking. And I thought that was another one where we become, because we're coming from an emotional place, we become quite defensive, and sometimes we do need to recenter ourselves around that action that we're taking and the feelings that we're feeling that may impact how we're teaching our young people, how we're actually helping them to work through what's the right way to get a better outcome.
Yes. And we're only in control of our own emotions. We can't control other people's emotions. So focusing on how we're actually managing ourselves is a really important factor in our relationship with our children.
And as you said, caring for ourselves, I think we don't do that very well. And I think when our children are young, we run out of time. We're not necessarily sleeping well. It was fascinating how many people said that they were tired, or their response was tired. And I think that's important for us to take on board, because if we're feeling like that, well, we're not caring enough for ourselves, and we're not going to be our best version to be able to role model or engage or give the patience that we may need to give, because we're running on empty already. So hopefully that's a tip everybody can take as well. But yeah, fascinating. Thank you so much, Rachel. Much more we could be discussing, of course.
Yes,
but thank you for
all
sharing.
day.
That's right. So I will share back with everyone who's joined the link to be able to listen to this again, to be able to share with those that are in your community or network. If you are coming from a school or a PNC or a family or community group, feel free to share it on. We're here to help. So that's very much where we're at. Rachel kindly shared her details at the end of the slide session as well, which means that you're more than welcome to have that and share that on as well. And I will share Rachel's social media as I share those links and all the rest of the information. So if you're wanting to get more, you can. With that, we'll send you a bit of a survey. As I said, we're designing everything based on what you guys are giving us as feedback. So please take 30 seconds to complete that survey and give us your feedback and your ideas on what you'd like to see next. My brain's going crazy, Rachel, about a next follow-up session where I want to ask you more questions and get some more tips and strategies. So looking forward to having that conversation. And just, I did share in the chat there, our next session is coming up on financial well-being, and that's something that we have heard from a lot of people in the last couple of years, that financial need or that financial balance is really impacting and influencing people. So Peter Swan from Bendigo Bank has kindly offered to share some tips more about young people and how young people can learn how to better position themselves, maybe some insights and information about balancing their ideas as they enter that early career. I'm pretty sure we're all going to walk away with information from that. So the link to register is there. That session is also free for all. And then our session in March is on from a fabulous trauma-based expert, Graham Bent, who will be sharing the link between trauma response and nutrition, which will be absolutely fascinating. So that will be our members series. You do need to be a member to be able to join that Think Tank series. So check out the website to find out more about that. In the meantime, thank you, Rachel. Thank you all for joining. Hopefully you've shared some ideas with yourself that you can share with others. Thank you to those who have shared their kind feedback in the chat box, and have a lovely evening.